texts that were instrumental in allowing these areas to become a part of modern psychology. 2005, he was a core member of the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology at Palo Alto. The OBE experiment of 1968, Tart conducted an out-of-body experience experiment with a subject known as Miss Z for 4 nights in his sleep laboratory. Miss Z was attached to EEG machine, her 5-digit code, and was placed on a shelf above her bed. She did not claim to see the number of the first 3 nights, but on the 4th night gave the number correctly. That's cool.
Anyway, may his memory be for a blessing. Go ahead and look at the link I put in the chat, and it'll take you to Facebook where I posted a bunch of these things, and it's a great loss. I was really touched by him because he was just kind. When I went there to interview him in Berkeley, and I needed to go home, and he said, "Don't you want to use the bathroom before you go home?" I said, "I'll probably be right." And he just looked at me and said, "I think you would really be better off if you used the bathroom." And I did, and he was right. And I got that he was coming from pure kindness. I was not wanting to bother him, and he thought that was ridiculous. He wanted to make sure the right thing happened. So he was a great man, and I'm sorry to see him gone.
Thank you, and rest in transition. Oh, that's sad. When circling back on to topics today, do we want to hear any more of Miss Oprah and Miss Pollen?
That is so troublesome.
Yeah. Get another soundbite here.
Very trouble. And he's like, I swear to God, the next weekend. Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like the way that, because that is so
Martin Luther King
well received, or widely received at least, anything involving Oprah or Pollen, I feel like is kind of worth looking at just the way they're framing these concepts, what they've got, and why it's bubbling up right now, because Pollen's book came out a number of years ago now, and that, had its peaks, and it's still there. It continues to still be like, it's interestingly, because I don't consider him much of a psychonaut, even though his first book, Botany of Desire, written in, I guess, the 90s, one of the plants he does look at is cannabis. And so and its mind-altering qualities, and he probably, even though it's not suggested very often, but his work as a literary journalist or whatever he is, a popular writer, I think did bring cannabis into a better light for a lot of people as one of the flagships of altered states into the public's mind. Now, but and then he also he wrote these essays on whether he could grow poppies or not, and things in his suburban yard, and legality issues involving things like that, and how poppies are often grown even though it's actually illegal to grow poppies. Certain opium poppies are grown as an ornamental. So he his kind of a way of looking, and then he looked also at, interestingly, he did another essay which is lost in obscurity now, I'm sure, but it was whether or not 5-MeO-DMT worked or not, and it was basically based on smoking toads was what the idea was, and it was him kind of trying to explore the concept of that, which is funny because I feel like he didn't ever find the toad at that point to work, if I remember the way the essay sort of summed it up. And so now, of course, many people are finding that obviously 5-MeO-DMT does work, but there was something about that smoking toad essay of his that brought him deeper into this sort of edgy, obscure elements of psychedelic world. And then he dropped this book, How to Change Your Mind, which really has had a huge impact. And because he's such a popular writer, brought psychedelics to the world possibly more than anyone else has. Anyway,
well, he is a good writer. I think we have an amazing writer right on the table with us too. I wish somebody else had been interviewed in this situation. Okay, let's hear it. Speaking of that, let's kind of get to this bottom question, which is in this. It says, "But do they work?" All right, so let's hear what they say.
Have had and continue to have preconceived notions and judgments around psychedelics, and at the time, I didn't think our culture, or I, for that matter, was ready for this conversation. I thought, whoa, that's really this is really bold of Michael to do this in 2018, which at the time it was. But now I've noticed, and I think you are the reason for part of this shift. I've seen, first of all, more articles about it, more stories about it, more people who've engaged with the experience of psychedelics. And I think something is happening in the culture. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, what's happened since 2018 is I never would have imagined how many how many studies are going on, how much research is being done, and how many people are seeking psychedelic therapy. And in one
Would you
way,
say you were part of that change though? Because when you wrote this book, which
it was pretty fringe.
Yes.
And I really didn't think that there was a large audience for a book on psychedelics. I was just personally fascinated. But yeah, I mean, I think the book, I hear especially from scientists, that it became okay to study this after the book came out.
How to Change Your Mind is such a perfect title, too.
Thank you.
I love that.
It's what it's about.
What the new science of psychedelics teaches us about consciousness, dying, addiction, depression, and transcendence. I thought, well, if it does all that, I'm going to read this book.
It's a big promise.
That's a big promise.
But what got me really interested and making me realize, so I had very little experience of psychedelics personally. I was afraid of them. I didn't think I was sturdy enough psychologically to have a big psychedelic trip. And I didn't do it when I was in college. But I wrote an article about a study where they were giving psychedelics to people who had cancer diagnoses, many of them terminal. And
was this Roland Griffith's article?
Yes. Roland Griffith.
Roland Griffith, who I interviewed. Yes. In his last dying days.
I know. That's an amazing interview.
Yes.
How do we awaken and stay awake to the wonder of what our existence is?
And he was so calm about the experience of dying. Yes. And so you read Roland Griffith's article.
So he was doing a study, he hadn't published it yet, giving psychedelics, psilocybin specifically, magic mushrooms in pill form, to people who had cancer diagnoses. And I interviewed about a dozen of them. And they told me stories of personal
May I just tell people who he was? He's a renowned researcher of psychedelics at Johns Hopkins.
Yes, he really got what's called the psychedelic renaissance started with his research.
Because he wrote this paper on the mystical and spiritual experience of it all, right?
Yeah, in 2006.
Yeah.
And that really launched the whole revival of psychedelic research, which had been a big thing in the 50s and 60s. I didn't realize it. But in the 50s, LSD was considered a wonder drug. There were 6 international conferences on LSD alone. There were...
Hey, I just wanted to acknowledge that this, which is fascinating when you kind of draw these comparisons, but the author of the cochlear ear study for mice, he indicated that part of what spurred the decision to push this research forward was that he read a conference paper from the 60s that indicated increased hearing acuity from LSD consumption. So drawing correlations where, things picked up. It's pretty fascinating.
So one of the things that I didn't like about the interview is I think there's like sort of a fame machine that people at Oprah and Michael's level play where, he was important, but he wasn't one of the people who started a psychedelic renaissance. And he says that. He says, no, it's Roland. But people, like Jim Fadiman and people like Roland Griffith and all these people had been working, hard since the early 2000s to make this happen. And then Michael, because he's a very popular journalist and writes well, and has big publishers behind him, now gets seen as one of the people who was really the main...
Dr. Ryan! Hi, Dr. Ryan!
He knew nothing about psychedelics whatsoever and hadn't spent decades of career working and making it happen. He's not like Rick Doblin. He's not like Jim. And yet he kind of steps in, and somebody like Oprah just wants to push all this fame on him. And it just kind of felt a little weird to me to be hearing that.
Yeah, his acknowledgement of his lack of experience in consuming entheogens and psychedelics is clear. I mean, he's more experienced now, and I think that's the interesting piece about this is that the speed of all of it, within the book, right, within his book, it's a nice compendium of everything that was from the 60s all the way up until that most recent research that he kind of talks about and that they're referring to. So I think, he encapsulated a very initial point in time, and I think the book gave light and credit to a lot of people. But I also think that you're 100% right. I think the Oprah media machine is a fascinating contextual beast that it is. I mean, the actual full interview has over 1 million views, and so with that being said, it's interesting to see how this will change the greater perspective on it, because she's coming at it from a pretty open-minded point of view now. I think she makes it clear that she has some personal fear about that, whether she would actually go and consume entheogens or psychedelics. However, I look at Oprah as a pretty intelligent and progressive person, so I would see that, like, if she thought this was something that might help her, she would be somebody that would try it. So, do we want to keep going a little bit more? Do we want them a little bit more on this front end piece here? And then we can tap in. Thumbs up below, anybody? Anyone? Yes, no? All right, here we go.
In the 50s.
In the 50s, up till 1965, from 50 to, so we
And
think
then
of
it just got
psychedelics.
banned, and also people
the drug
said
war.
the drug war.
Yeah, and President Nixon, who
Yes.
starts the drug war, said that the drug war, there's a quote that he gave to John Ehrlichman, his domestic policy advisor, that we're going after LSD to get the hippies and cannabis to get the blacks. And those were his two enemies. And that's what the drug war was really about.
Yes.
And so anyway, there had been all this very promising research. LSD was being used to treat alcoholism with a lot of success. So I didn't know this whole backstory. I thought of psychedelics as a 60s thing, but it's really a 50s thing. And there was this promising research that gets shut down. And we lose like 30 years of research that is just now resumed.
So some people are drawn, we know, to psychedelics because they are suffering from mental illness or mental trauma. Not mental illness, mental trauma. Mm-hmm. Because I think if you're suffering from mental illness, a lot of people shouldn't take it if you are.
There are definitely people who shouldn't mess around with these substances. People at any risk of schizophrenia, if you have a relative that has schizophrenia, usually bipolar, they don't
Nope.
They don't want you in the
You need
studies.
to leave these drugs alone.
Yeah. But people struggling with addiction, anxiety, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, trauma. Yeah, those are mental disorders that
PTSD.
Yeah.
We're going to talk to somebody later. So some are spiritual seekers, some are suffering from mental traumas, and others are just looking for this experience or seem to be doing it for fun.
Just ripped a huge
All right.
fart.
I
I have trauma. I'm gonna have to drink some more coffee.
Oprah acknowledges the three
Smoke some weed
modalities
to
that we
clear
talk
out this
about.
gaseous air. Pizza farts.
Oh man, what are your thoughts, Jordan?
Yeah, once again, I mean, I know everyone has to do a lot of CYA, and if we mention anything like schizophrenia or even bipolar, that you immediately have to say anyone who has any history of any part of that, they have to stay really far away from it. And when you listen to Jim speak about this, the nuance is so much greater that we don't have any research as to whether microdoses might be helpful for these people because they're always on purpose excluded from the research. Same things with, the mothers of the mushrooms and that kind of stuff. Why we have absolutely zero research on pregnant and breastfeeding and early parenting women, because they're always excluded. So, this question about if somebody has even the tiniest bit of schizophrenia anywhere in their family history, does that mean that they're a definite no-go for all psychedelics, including microdoses? There's no evidence that anybody has taken a microdose and had a full-blown schizophrenic fit. We don't have any actual cases. Jim has been in correspondence with some of the people who, saying this, some of the researchers, and then he'll ask them, have you ever actually seen a case where this has happened? And they'll go, no. But people feel compelled to toe the party line because there's a very, very small chance that something could happen and there would be legal liability. So it may be that schizophrenics would be supported by the anti-inflammatory effects and the homeostasis and the enhanced neuroplasticity at such a small level. They might be a lot healthier overall. But we'll never know because they're always going to be excluded. And something about that just kind of irks me as well.
You hear that, Ryan? We're gonna fix
I
you up,
agree.
Ryan. We're gonna make you
concur
a
with
man
you
again.
100%.
You've already gone through my
The stopping
LGBTQ
point for me where
dehomosexualizing therapeutic
we can keep
services,
listening
but
to hear
now
what the response
we're
is.
going to make you
but I still
into.
think
Oh
that
God!
the context that's created about the
God!
greater
God! Are you
use
prepared to
scenarios, right? So
transition
laying down those use
to
case
the
scenarios,
divine, Dr. Ryan?
medical therapeutic approach, which is
I know
including
you've
a
dressed
lot of
up
the
as a
research
woman,
aspects that
but
we're talking
are you
about,
ready
it's
to
sort of being
become a
kind of
God?
right?
God!
So it's saying, oh yeah, it's ongoing, but its information is sort
We'll
of
cure
lost.
that
It's-
middle
doesn't-
finger
doesn't have the
herpetic
means
sore.
or the
We'll
information
replace
that
it
we need in order to be able to
with a
use
gauntlet
your own
of
decision,
power.
from this. Here, let's keep listening a little bit more. I want to hear what Michael says after.
Don't
this
be afraid,
piece,
Dr.
that
Ryan.
Oprah just kind of.
This is your destiny.
Yeah, I mean, people. The term recreational is regarded as a negative. I mean, to recreate ourselves doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are people who are just doing it for thrills, going to concerts.
But in every single instance, isn't it about changing consciousness?
Yeah, it
Yes.
does change consciousness. But the set and setting are very important. So the context in which you do it, if you do it to go to a Grateful Dead concert, it's one thing. If you do it in a room, I mean, the way psychedelic therapy is done is you're lying down, you're on a couch, you're wearing eye shades.
I'm not hearing
you're listening
anything,
to
James.
music. It's a very internal journey. It's very different.
Everybody else, can you hear that?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Could you hear the voice?
Yes.
The piece?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
Different than kids taking mushrooms and walking in the woods, where it's all about the sensory thrills.
So if you're using it for therapy, as a lot of people now are,
It's a completely different experience.
it's a guided experience.
Right. And the guide is really important.
So were you reluctant to take, I mean, you were pretty straightforward guy.
I was terrified.
Were you reluctant to take them yourself?
Yes. I was scared for a lot of reasons. One was, would I discover some deep, dark secret about myself? Because people do discover traumas that they're not looking for.
Yes.
That definitely comes up.
I would be afraid of having a psychotic break.
Yeah.
I would be afraid of losing my mind
I was.
and not getting it back.
I was.
You were.
Yeah.
Well, we hear Oprah's fears. So I wonder if the post of this, if they do a roundup, or if she talks to somebody else that might be famous. Oh man, I hope you guys get this opportunity. I would really love the record to be set straight, or at least more information to be out. It's kind of like a teaser, right? It's like when you listen to this, it's like a psychedelic teaser. Like you're hearing the sound bites that you want to hear, that make you interested, that get you tapped in, but it doesn't give you the information to actually move forward with taking any steps. And I think that's going to be a constant thing, right? With anybody speaking in the space on the grand context like this. So it'll be interesting to see when your publishers say, Jordan, you can't say that. I hope they don't do that. I actually don't think you'll let them. Oh man.
But I also found that doing it with a guide creates this safe envelope, this container in which you can really let go.
Okay, so tell us about the time you tell about experiencing your parents in the trees.
Oh yeah. I
said, oh, Michael is really tripping. But the realization that you had seemed pretty solid. And Michael, I mean, it made me so curious because I'm surrounded by trees. I love trees. I think I have something is going on with me and trees. I don't know what it is. So your experience, tell everybody what that was.
We don't need to dive into that too deep there. Any other, who else listens to this? Any reflexes?
Good night. Goodbye, Miss Burton.
This one. positively think about any talking about this is a good thing. I did want to kind of do like a political roundup for a second. Some of the states are kind of still moving forward. We did a legislative roundup a week or two ago. Right now, like Connecticut is popping up in the news feed, and some of the other states with their exploratory committees, excuse me, are really moving forward. So, the access issue that kind of is like talked about this is starting. It's not that it's fading. Paulin makes it very clear that products are out there and things like that. And I always want to encourage people, know the products that you consume before you consume anything.
Got uninvested
But
cash.
what I'm seeing from a greater standpoint as these political discussions, as state discussions continue to move forward, is that I'm feeling my intuition right now revolving around the political climate in the greater country, the way that there's a lot of dismantling going on of different government agencies.
Dismantle
and
them
whether
all.
things get descheduled,
Free us!
get sidelined. I think there's
Liberty
psychedelics over the
now!
next 4 years is really going to be a state-to-state thing. So
I'm gonna send you a
the
machine gun
likelihood of
ride.
that feels really strong.
100 million
right now
rounds
as we
of
see
ammunition,
the
a
direction
tank,
going
a
forward,
jet,
and then looking at all the
fuel,
different
and
states
soldiers.
and everybody that's
You will be a
that's talking about
conqueror,
this. So
Ryan.
we'll-
I will build you a war
I've seen
machine!
some of the pieces like Jordan that you're so
To
wonderfully
war!
laying out for us when it comes to kind of the actual state of the psychedelic union, so to say, especially in regards to microdosing. That there's going to be a shift over the next year or two, and even the next 6 months, and that is acknowledged enough in this piece for us to say that time to put the walking shoes on and everybody get on a walkabout and start spreading the spores of all the information that we have.
Spread the gospel, Ryan! Holy shit, look at that ass!
It's like a coffee shop. I'm Michael James up on top, hanging out with the Michael fam. We're talking about Oprah. We talked a little bit about some recent studies that are interesting, and I hope you guys are enjoying the show today. And morning, Stephen. How's it going?
I'm doing good. Kid had a sleepover for his bestie last night. So they're sitting down eating French toast with strawberries and sausage links. That's what I've been doing this morning.
I want some fresh toast. I actually have some brioche. I think I'm gonna make that today.
So James, the other French toast. That's what's up.
Good morning, Stephen, and nice to see you. James, the other broadcast that I found interesting this week was that Andrew Huberman did a thing with Richard Schwartz, the founder of IFS. And, I've got a little bit of a bug on my butt about IFS. And it was just interesting to have those guys on there as well, especially since IFS is getting pushed into the psychedelic world as the way to work with this idea of multiple selves if you're doing any kind of psychedelic.
Is that an article that you found?
No, it was a full-blown Huberman podcast with Richard Schwartz. We talk about IFS, and once again, you can hear Richard describing how he discovered all this stuff when, of course, there was 50 years of people working on multiple cells before Madeline came along. So there's a kind of, once again, you see this thing that is at the top of the kind of publicity and commercial curve, getting a lot of press as being the only real way of dealing with something. And
Dr. Ryan, is that Clubhouse dead right now or something? I'm so surprised you're still here.
Of macrodoses versus
Did everybody
microdoses,
disappear?
like
Or did they block us?
Powerful system.
Probably blocked us.
Trained and you have to
But we'll be back with a new burner soon to roast them all.
said about multiple cells is that it's much, much simpler than that. Once you come to the recognition that cells are real,
Gretchen.
several of them, and so
She's got 3 kids. Where'd Daddy go?
start working with them.
Daddy's home.
That's all you really need.
Jordan, are you saying I was schizophrenic and so am I?
No, schizophrenia actually has very little to do with
I'm
it.
just playing.
Schizophrenia
I'm just lightning.
Yeah, you're playing, but that's kind of putting out one of the myths that we're trying.
Dr.
to
Alex Rick wants to say something.
Schizophrenia is an organic meltdown of the brain, and one of the symptoms is you hear voices sometimes. with multiple
That's not
cells. some
sometimes.
people
I hear
have-
them all the time.
Holy
And I do whatever the
shit.
voices in my head tell me to do.
Well, that's what everybody does because they have different selves and the voices are talking. It's normal to have different voices and perspectives and to be arguing with yourself. It's not schizophrenia. That's a whole actual organic meltdown of the brain. So they're different. So I'm sorry if I jumped on you about that, but that's one.
Jordan,
people
we
put
need to
out
get
right
you.
away.
We need to get you settled down, smoking a joint because you're taking things all too seriously. I'm just playing with you. Calm down, brother. I love.
Gets annoying, right? When people don't have any like high value information to transmit and they're just, having casual conversations, it can get annoying.
Christianity, which says you should just like love everyone. These are very different models of human nature,
Yeah, I think that Christianity's model is prone towards self-psychological abuse, like a sense of failure, because it's all internal in the head. I've heard different guys talk about this. When I explained to them the legalistic nature of Judaism, they felt that was some degree of comfort, because then they would have known they accomplished this, that, the other, rather than sort of constantly.
This is Dr. McZed, Dr. Ryan.
They have to pretend like they're always internally they feel like they're always failing, and sometimes the Catholics process that by creating hell. It's a very psychologically fraught religion, I think.
That's why you have guilt and Catholic guilt, which I always thought was so funny because Catholics believe that you can sort of like talk to a priest and he can like sort of like make you, whatever. You can go to confession and that relieves you of your like sin. But like, shouldn't that be that you're the least guilty society? Like, you go have sex with a prostitute and then you go to confession and then you're clean slate baby. But it doesn't seem to work that way. It seems to be the slate.
Yeah, because that's a blank check. That was the problem that what's his face was complaining against. Luther. He didn't like the indulgences. The fact that a wealthy guy, because he's like building a freaking cathedral, can like kill people and get an indulgence from the church. It was like crazy.
Well, yesterday
Really, really angry about it.
in a room McZed, I heard a Muslim girl say that, Islam came because the rabbis were essentially selling indulgences, and thus that's why Jesus flipped the tables at the temple. So, I mean, I don't know. Can it go
they
both
were
ways?
money changers. The people that Jesus was interfering with was that the rabbis, not the rabbis, like they were money changers. They were like bankers, I guess, right in front of the temple, because people came to the temple with all kinds of currency, but the temple only accepted shekels. So it just needed to be transferred.
Right.
And for whatever reason, like in order to make his demonstration, he felt throwing over the money tables would, I don't know, make things better.
So wait, sorry, Sammy, to interrupt. Can you compress again, McZed, why you think Christianity is, deals with
Psychologically fraught.
Yeah, psychologically fraught.
I think it's psychologically fraught because it doesn't really push the moral consideration into like free will and action. It pushes it more into your mind and heart. And I feel like in your mind and heart, there's no real determiner of whether I was engaged in good behavior or bad behavior for my own sake or for God's sake. Whereas when you did the action is done. It's measurable. You can say you did it. And by the way, I do think that like Catholicism does know that. That's why they have their.
Yes, I was about to say that.
Catholicism has their actions. I just think that the actions that Catholicism engage in are totemic in nature and not really resolving the sin. I don't think they fully acknowledge how to make up for sin. But I would say that like psychologically, confession in a booth about your sins can be helpful. I don't think they go the full way to actually process their congregants.
I used to have this Jewish idea that like it doesn't matter what I think. That when Jesus says that when you like have lust in your heart, you've already sinned or whatever. And like I'm starting to move to the idea that this is like actually that there's a healthiness to the idea that like your mind should be like cultivated to have virtuous thoughts, and that it's not just a playground of like whatever you want to do with. Because whenever I thought about my friends, I was like, how can I help them? And if I thought and I thought like nice thoughts, stuff like that, like I would act better. So like treating your mind as like merely just a playground for you to fantasize in probably does cause you to like do less good than if you like sort of try to cultivate it to be a garden.
Well, I mean, there are Jewish laws about thought. What Jesus was quoting the law correctly. He was discussing herhor. It is a prohibition to engage in thought, to do a sin of some kind. I mean, like, Judaism has multiple different vectors that it's working with. It works on your thoughts, it works on your speech, it works on your actions, it works on your prayers. Like, you know, it's a religion. All religions are basically picking up pieces of things humans are doing and characterizing it within their own framework. Jews didn't invent prayer. They didn't invent bowing. They didn't invent sacred texts. I don't believe they invented animal skin as a parchment. The Jews were a religion. They are a religion. They took what they saw from other people. They understood how God was telling them to do it, and then they trained themselves forever to do it.
Hayes, Dad, would you say that the Jewish view on morality is somewhat similar in that sense to what you were talking about when you were talking about virtue ethics and Aristotelian view of ethics?
Yeah, I would say that a big deviation from Judaism, from the sects, is the dismissal of virtue ethics, like pushing towards different ways of dealing with morality. But if you look at the 613 commandments that the Jews calculate out from the 5 books of Moses, each one of them is like a virtue. Like, some of them are like doubled and they're like broad categories and the rabbis break them down, but all of them are, and the way we characterize it is that they are good innately. Not because God told you, not just because of your nature, but because of all the things. These are like good. Every definition of good applies to these things. And because you're a human, it's on you to understand why it's good. Why shouldn't we steal? Why should we take care of the poor, the sick, and the orphans? Right? And then in that virtue point, by having 613 like stars in the sky that shine brighter as you understand them, you understand good human behavior. So it's very virtually ethic based.
Right. The reason I asked is because I thought it was very interesting, the kind of parallels that you were drawing and the kind of parallels that I was drawing between that and what I see in a Hindu ethical model, right? An Indian ethical model, which is also quite similar in that sense, and also incorporates, aspects like karma and stuff like that. So even though figuratively a Hindu can go into the Ganges and wash his sins, that will just be a spiritual cleansing. It does not relieve him of the burden of karma. So the weight of his actions in that sense will still carry into his life. It's
We
just
have
that the
a similar
spiritual.
idea when it comes to atonement. When a person engages in sin, we say that there's a repentance process, which involves confession, like acknowledging that what they did was wrong, returning to never wanting to do that again, and that's like the end of the repentance. But then there's the atonement, which I think would be touching upon the karmic balance you're referencing. And we say that the only atonement, depending upon the level of sin, sometimes it doesn't atone until death, and your death is an atonement. And sometimes it's just a pain. The universe will hurt you in some way, and if you are loyal and faithful to the messages of the universe, when you notice it, you should say, this should be an atonement for my past sins. Things like that.
Yeah, I just thought it was a very interesting way of looking at the world, especially considering that the time frames of the development of these ideas, I think more or less is quite similar. I feel like, from what I understand about the Indian scriptures, they are a bit older, but the parallels are quite apparent either ways.
Right. They are two of the oldest consistent cultures on the planet today.
So
yeah, that was another thing I wanted to comment on, if you will let me. I just think it's funny, you were talking about the importance of it, but unfortunately, just having that is not enough. Case in point would be India, which while it does have a very rich repository, that is by no means enough for us to make decisions, especially when it comes to social issues and things like that.
That's true. There are some drawbacks. But like India is a large, complicated place. It's not as simple as saying like the religion of India. You know? Whereas the religion of Judaism, for whatever the weird historical whirlwinds
Yeah, for better or for worse, you know. Yeah,
we all still kind of know what Judaism is, despite what everyone will tell you.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think the complexity is something that does hold India back, even though you know it is something that we keep working on. It is true that because of the nature of the religion and the nature of the cultural fabric, trying to build common bridges is harder than it may seem at first glance.
Like, good instances are like the Balkans and Yugoslavia. Like you can't just force them together. They're all Slavic, but they got different languages and they got reasons for hating each other, and they're all going to kill each other. But they all should federate into some kind of a union. Like they benefit.
Yeah, same with Africa, I'd say to a certain extent. You know, it's very beneficial for them.
Exactly, but the desire for federation usually leads to empire. The things that cause federations to become states are usually when they are self-directed tribal affiliations. Tribal affiliations that unite into a larger federal body, that becomes a real state. And the Jews have survived that moment. When they were 12 tribes, they could have been like any other Arab tribe that would have been wiped out. When they united into the state of Israel, they became something new forever.
Yeah, fair enough, you know. And I just think it's a very interesting conversation to have because I think Judaism in that sense has a much more nuanced view on morality. It can be very frustrating to speak to a Christian or somebody from an Islamic outlook. Not to say that I think any of them are correct. I just think it is more interesting in that sense to speak to a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Jew.
Right. Well, because the underlying question is whether or not you get into deep moral waters to discern what is correct and what is incorrect. If that's terrifying to you, and it's terrifying to a lot, it's a lot easier to say, hey, here's the answer, just stay on this path. Right? That is what the religious want. They don't want to search for the answer. They want it to be given to them, which is part of the benefit of the Torah. Right? The answers are given. We just tell you got to study it for the rest of your life, and then maybe you'll understand it.
Yeah, but you see, there is a very complex social structure around that book, right? A structure that promotes discussion, a structure that promotes even disagreement.
Yes.
That is something, but see, for the reason I made the comparison is because if you compare that to the other younger offshoots of Abrahamic faith, while they do have an academic circle, they don't have the same level of let's just say approval of skepticism, to put it lightly.
Right. Well, that's a different level of critical thought. Like, that's what I'm saying. If you bite the bullet and say that humans are functioning with free will, you are what you choose to be, and you can do whatever you set your mind to, if you bite that bullet, you're in the game. At that point, like, you have to understand it. Because you're saying that.
Yeah, things get a lot more complex.
Right? You walk on the water,
Right, but I've been sitting in this room
I don't think that the value is simply in doing, like, the deeds that were told to you by your deity. I think the value is in understanding what you're doing and why.
Yeah. I wonder why that instinct is so fundamental in between, the religions that came before and the ones that came after. If you know what I mean, the sense of intentionality.
Dr. Normo!
At the level of the individual.
I'm in Sam's room. Mixet is enlightening us as to the divine wisdom of Judaism.
It's very different. It's a completely different ballgame.
Mixet is I gotta say, Mixet might be one of the smartest people Could be the
verified
smartest
thoughts,
person on this app.
aspirations.
I don't know if
Like
he's
Alexander changed the game.
he's probably the tops because
Christianity.
he's got the the law behind him. He's got 2x law, El Momo. This guy's a 2xer. And a 2x, then it makes him a 10x guy. He's a 10x!
See, I don't think that the religion.
Do you regret not going to law school?
What room is this?
The host's name is Sam. He's a young Jewish guy. He's, he spends a lot of time on this app. His name is Sam Rosen Dingus. It's called God Talk in Sam's house.
Okay, let me look for it. I have my quibbles with Big Sid.
Oh, he's antagonistic towards you.
That's because I act superior to him. We actually have gotten together in the real world a few times. And with his wife, who is unbelievably hot, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah. He's in that TV show,
I saw, yeah. Well, I didn't see it, but people were talking about it.
Well, you should take a look at it because it's actually very, it's very revealing. And the therapist is very hot.
Did you see the Columbia thing? How Trump took out $400 million? I guess they repented so they could keep the money.
I haven't seen a response to the removal of the $400 billion, and I'm going through the Times right now where you got a notification.
I saw something. The headline was like they withdrew their position, because I guess the financial loss was too much, so they are backtracking. I don't know if that's
I didn't know
accurate.
they had a position. They were refusing to deal with this problem?
Yeah, I guess that's what it's about. Is they're going to practice enforcement. I could try to Google it, but I'm sure if you Google it, it'll be the latest news. But
okay.
Yeah, I don't know why Mixed is antagonistic towards you. It could be because
they act superior, and we engage in intellectual battle. It's understandable. It's a Jewish man thing.
Well, I'm thinking he's more of the position that. Well, I don't know his position, I guess, on Israel-Palestine, meaning that, like, if he thinks that, I don't know, I'm just saying that he may have a different overall opinion on the conflict and the states, and I don't know. Anyone can think they're so smart they can rationalize and come to the conclusion definitively, but see, McZed is so smart. He's tentative even in his positioning at the end. He's he's a very good lawyer is what it is. He's
I hate to I have quibbles with that. Let's just put it that way. I think he talks, that's for sure, and he has a position. Some of his positions are weird to me. Like he's against prison, period. He said it's unconstitutional.
Well,
it's the first time I clashed with him. He also thinks that Israel should be led by, by Moshiach.
Well,
you know what Litvish is?
Litvish?
Yeah.
Not really, no.
So there's sort of a bit of a schism. It's a friendly schism, I would say, in Judaism between Hasidus and Litvish. They don't really groove with each other, although they're interested in each other. Hasidus is just more spiritual and a little mystical. Mm-hmm. And Litvish is resolutely focused on the law. It's like the law is the path to connect with God.
I can see that. I can see how if you take the mysticism out of it, and you just pursue the law ruthlessly, you get to like a zero position, and then the real world, the material world, is the spiritual world, and so it's like a second way of doing it.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, it's they're very devout. They're also known as yeshivish.
Mm-hmm.
And then people on the app are yeshivish. He's something called, I think he's Young Israel, which is sort of modern. And then the Hasids try to be much, 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 much more mitzvah obsessed. You know?
I can see. I know why people fall away from Judaism, because it is so expansive and, you know, integrative. And then in a Western world, you just see how much extra work that is, and people are just generally lazy. So that's why I say, if you're raised by a father and his father was raised by that way, it's like, if you lose that succession, I mean, it's a big loss, because you're talking about like a whole lineage that might, fall off the derech. But I mean, it's remarkable if, you have Jewish education, but everything is like a double-edged sword. But anyways, yeah, I just find McZed to be a big giver, and
Well, I'm glad. I want you to admire him. I don't want to. I'm trying to be careful not to say anything negative.
No, I know. But I am surprised to see you two have conflict, which like blows my mind, because maybe it's healthy, maybe it's unhealthy, but I'm surprised to see him like aggressively go at you, where I'm just like, that's a quirk. Like, I didn't expect that. Like, what is, why is there conflict between two Jews? I mean, is it political? Meaning, like, he thinks he's a priest. See, this is where, like, the atheist agnostic.
He's a Kohen.
I know, but he has like a very distinctive position, because he is a Kohen, and so I don't know. To me, it's like, if you view it as LARPing, live action role playing, like, is he taking it literally too seriously? Is he so sure of himself that like that's his defect or his weakness?
That's one of them.
Yeah.
He has lots of opinions about stuff that are ridiculous.
It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny because, I mean, he's, I don't know, like, I have friends that are pro-Palestine, and to me, they're insane, and even before October 7th and the whole conflict, they had no interest in Palestine, no interest in Jews, no interest in Israel, but come October 7th, they are now full-time 365 all about posting baby videos and things like that. And I'm like, what happened to you? Like, why is this your form of communication now? I mean, I like to think perhaps they're trying to get laid, but I know they're not getting laid before, and they're not getting laid now. It's like, so why are you choosing to essentially become pieces of propaganda? And if they were to talk to McZed, like, they would say, cool. I mean, they wouldn't even know his positions are, weird. But weird is always like the clown house thing, where there's no.
Well, wait, do you think that they would not know that he's pro-Israel?
Yeah, they would determine that he's probably pro-Israel and a Zionist. But anyways, this is, I'm
not saying his positions on Jewish things are necessarily weird, although he says anti-blanket, anti-prison, it says it's anti-Torah. That's a weird quirk. Also, he has lots of opinions about movies and television, because he seems to watch everything. And they're just, he doesn't get it, and a lot of people don't get it, so it's not like something for argument, but there's a overconfidence, I guess you could say. There's opinions about stuff that he knows nothing about.
Well, I asked him what's his favorite movie. He said Dinner with Andre. So I was like, really?
That's a great example.
So I bought the movie, and it is a little bit like a clown house room, but I don't know, that my position, that all communication is hypnosis. Like, that's a good example of hypnosis, where it's just, it's a script. It's people being recorded in a booth. It's such a fixed environment that, it makes it into like a very audio movie, meaning that like Clown House is social audio. That's like a movie audio, with no moving set pieces. And so
it's barely a movie. It's only a movie because it's not a movie.
Right. And I don't know, it's just that I was like, I was kind of angry because I bought, I spent like 25, $30 on this stupid movie version. And I'm like, McZed, like, honestly, like, I thought you were going to give me like some hidden gem. I was like, this was like the worst waste of time ever.
Right. He has lousy taste, so that's a problem. How do you argue? You can't argue taste.
I don't know. I can't even imagine.
What?
I can't even imagine having. I'll tell you the truth. Like well, not truth. I think the cool thing about Clown House is it is projection, and so like if you ask him about Christianity, he will tell you his reason why he disagrees with it, and that almost becomes like an accurate projection of his condition, and it's like seems to be a universal thing about projection, if that makes any sense. It's just you can.
What do you mean?
Meaning that like truth is a double-edged sword. So when somebody supposedly tells their truth, it's like always a projection in a way. Even to like a small percentage, there's always an element of a projection in what somebody.
How is it in this case? He doesn't believe in Christianity because whatever, it's not right. It's it's never meant to come twice, and there's no Trinity and all that kind of stuff. But
well, meaning when you give an analysis, it applies to you too. Basically, that's what it is.
Okay.
Because if you're giving a good analysis, it's essentially you're giving yourself a kind of like a to-do list, saying prohibitions or bearing or forbearing, essentially. Because if you're saying something that's true, then it's good for you. And so what you're really kind of doing is giving yourself like a little medicine in your analysis projection. Or a friendly reminder to oneself that this is why
so
I think it feels.
How does this apply to him in the case of Christianity?
I'm just saying projection seems to be universal, where if you have a critique and you say this is what's wrong with it, even if it's accurate, there's still a message in that analysis for the self that he may be blind to or aware of. I don't know. I mean, see, McZed to me is like a fully integrated person, so I don't really disagree with anything he says. I mean, it's like, quirkiness. So, anyways, I don't,
Okay. I want you to enjoy him. I don't want to say anything negative.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's gossip. I mean, but we're not really gossiping about him. I mean,
there's another person who's like 100 times more educated in the law than him, in Jewish law than him, and we listen to him sometimes and smack our heads and talk back channel about how ridiculous this all is.
I don't know who that is, but
I know I'm not going to say because I don't want to get into a thing,
but that's the thing about programming. I mean, it is geographically specific. I mean, if you're in Brooklyn, and I don't know if you've seen the movie Dune, but like creating a mentat, you're creating like a human computer, and it's remarkable, and it keeps people out of, bad situations. I mean, education is the best thing going, and it always will be. But if it's just one track, and you're missing out on a lot more, information, you just don't see the layovers and the crossovers, or I don't know what dogmatism. I guess it creates like it just creates automatons that I mean, I was in an Israeli room a couple days ago, and this girl said we should kill them all, and I was like,
I've heard that.
I was like, yikes. Like, do you know what that?
I'm comfortable with that one, yeah.
Do you know what that really means? Like, you gonna go do it? You gonna do it? I mean, I just couldn't, I know why people say that kind of thing, because maybe they want to get a response, and so like they're putting out a feeler, and because it's a social audio safe space app, you can say anything. But, when I hear an Israeli say we should kill them all, I'm like, oof. Like, damn, like, you don't get it. Like, that's not kosher. You don't want to say it. You don't even want to think something like that. But like my friend is a cop here in Chicago, and he did community alternative policing with the Jewish community. And somebody in the meeting said, "Why can't we just drop a nuclear bomb on them? You know, we have nuclear bombs. Why can't we just drop a nuclear?" Because it's like people. I think just people want to troll and get dopamine feedback response from creating major conflict in either internally or externally, group on group. So, anyways, it's just it's just communication analysis at the end of the day. You know.
All right, I'm going to look around and see what's going on.
Okay, have a great day. Take care.
You too.
Science improved it a bit, but in the end, it's just a probability. I don't know. They're both persuasive. To me, it was just a question of like, what is the standard argument that if a person were to look at the universe, think about it for a second, would apply the concept of design to what he saw rather than non-design?
Yeah. So I fully agree that you can look at a watch and be like, that's designed. You can just tell when things are designed. But I think because we've never seen universes get made, like I haven't experienced like 56 universes and then been like, whoa, this one's way more orderly than those other 55. I like don't think I can make a claim about design because I just don't know what the default universe is like to then say that this one's different. Like, it could just be that like order is just the way things go when it comes to universes. Like that, like having laws of physics is just like the default state of things. And
That's
it's
the
like,
anthropic answer. That the only way we would be here to worry about that is if we were in a universe that happened to be stable enough.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That wasn't what I was saying, but that is true. But I'm just saying that like I don't know what the default case is for universes.
Just look at this room right now. You created it. I would say that this is like a microcosm of the macrocosm. This little room right now.
The universe could be by default orderly. Universes being created could be by default orderly or not.
It does based on the fine tuning like casework. If you look into the natural forces and how in balance they are with each other without having any apparent connection to each other, such that the universe
Key, what's going on? Like your room is so boring. You're coming to my room now.
Ways, if any of those. And here's the other weird thing. Aside from the fact that all of those constants would have to be finely tuned, as they pointed out.
Key, I gotta tell you, your rooms can be kind of boring.
At the beginning of the universe, it like settled into this.
What you really what people want on Clownhouse is they want to hear the smartest thing that they can. This is me at least. I want to hear the smartest people in the shortest amount of time because there's just so much chatter on here.
Unite them all. That is the grand unifying theory we're all hoping for.
What makes sense? What I would say is that the thing you said about anthropics is like very relevant here, where like we're only going to be in universes.
Hold on, Key. I don't know if I want to have a conversation with you yet.
I think
Put it in the chat.
The thing about the fine tuning is you just can't know how.
I know you want to get your dopamine kick, but
until you
let's just listen to what these Talmud Chachams are saying. Because Sam, I don't think is a learned Jew. Mixat is, so this could be a good combination between ridiculous philosopher Jew, atheist Jew, with learned theist Jew. This is a good matchup.
The light will turn on, or like you don't know what the thing happens when you change it. So like we don't know what would happen if we change gravity. Right. We don't know what would happen if we change the strong nuclear force. We can
see
guess.
This is a stupid person saying.
But we've because we've never altered the constants. We don't know what happens. Like
this is like schizo, Sam. This is what I detect is when people start talking about, what if we could change gravity?
The Princeton experiment.
I see.
Easily.
So the Princeton experiment, they put a guy in a room and made believe that there was a button that shocked him. It wasn't true. And every time, somebody pushed the button, the person in the other room would see a light and act like they were getting shocked. And so people got curious about it and they kept shocking them, even though they didn't know it wasn't happening. So we're so tethered by our own experience. But I teach quantum science, and at the subatomic level, things operate a lot different than they do.
Dr. Mitch, the Princeton experiments prove that people will kill people because there was a danger limit on that gauge, and people were killing people. That was the big what the F?
About curiosity, it was about being commanded to do it right. About obeying orders. That was the psychological experiment, and many people will obey the orders, even when it's like gonna kill someone.
Are you guys talking about the Milgram experiments as distinct from the Stanford prison study? The Stanford prison study has been debunked, and the Milgram studies are just a different thing than this. You're saying
No, I don't talk about the prison study.
there's the Milgram experiments. That's true. By the way, one thing that's a positive thing on the Milgram studies is if you in those studies, if someone else said let's stop doing this because this is bad, there are people will often conform to that too. So like, people are kind of malleable in this. Like, yes, if the doctor says shock them, they'll shock them. But if some other person's in the room is like, let's stop shocking them, they can also be very easily moved in that way. So it kind of just shows that like people are sort of like very influenced by social pressure, less so than that. I mean, or the optimistic thing is that they can be moved around both ways, positive and negative. By social pressure.
Yeah, I mean, so bystander effects and like Nazis happen.
Yeah.
There's like mob mentalities and bystander effects. Okay.
Yeah. Right. But like with the bystander effect, if someone goes, let's help them, like that can also be a thing that influences like human behavior, you know, like both courage and cowardice are contagious. Is kind of
It's almost as if all communication is hypnosis.
But
No, it's almost like it all.
Sully, did you hear my argument against fine-tuning argument? Were you critical of it?
I have some sympathy for that idea. Like, I wouldn't say it exactly the same way, but
I'm trying to convert Mixed to atheism. My Jewish brother.
one thing with like fine tuning is that like when people do like computer simulations where they just use the standard laws of physics and the constants that we think they are, like they have to do a bunch of sort of like fudging of the simulation to get it to look anything like the actual universe. So like, you know, you could just as well fudge like other parameter sets to
Yeah, but even if we perfectly ran it and it said that there was like, you know, because we've never actually messed with the parameters, I don't think we have any fucking idea what would happen. Because what something seems like would happen if you mess with a variable is not the same as what would actually happen if you mess with the variable. Like, it might seem like me flipping a light switch will do nothing to the room because it's just like moving some atoms around. But then no, actually no, it's connected to this whole fucking electrical system and like will totally change the illumination of the room. Like, it's hard to tell what's gonna happen when you change some shit if you don't fully understand the system, if you don't understand like if you've never messed with it at all.
You know, like bothers me about the fine tuning stuff is like we always think of this example as like, okay, there's like a bunch of knobs. You know, I don't know. There's like a whole bunch of knobs, and you can twist and you can turn them and put them on different settings and stuff like that. It's sort of fully independent of everything else. And I don't know if that's even the right way to think about it, because it might. Okay, maybe think about like a magnet. You know, just think about like a magnet, and you know, moving it across like a table full of like metal shavings or something like that. You know, you put the magnet on the bottom of the table and the metal shavings at the top. You know, and you just move the magnet on the bottom, and it just moves all the metal shavings that are on the top of the table. In that case, like it's the physical thing, the magnet, sort of like causing this force, and not the other way around. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that might be the better way. Like the force causing the, you know, then, you know, just like operating these like the constants independently of everything else. You know, it might be the other way around. Like kind of manipulate the matter to change the constants. I don't know.
Can I, Sam? Have you ever heard of the pattern on the trestle board, or the truth about the self?
Pattern on the trestle board seems very different than truth about the self, but I've heard about selves. I haven't heard about trestle boards.
So it's 10 verses. I can read them. They're very quick, and I'd love to talk about, you know, this thing called the pattern on the trestle board. It's a little card that I saw once, but I can read them real quick.
How do you feel about me reading them?
I can send it to you. You want to do that?
I have it right now.
Oh, you good? Did you go? Yeah, go for it.
All the power that ever was or ever will be is here now. All right, let's look at that sentence real quick. all the power that ever was or ever is here now. Like, what about the fucking power of the Big Bang? It's not here now. That had power.
I know, but the Big Bang is now, meaning that we are the expansion of it at this moment right now.
Yeah, so today roughly like the final, like the now is the final tally of all the power that's ever been, right?
Well, there is this theory of the B theory of time, where like all times are equally real, and that might be true. And if that is true, then it's false. If a theory of time is true, if only the now exists and the past and future aren't real, then I think I'd agree with you. But I think we can't rule out the idea that all times are equally real. And there's actually some evidence for that all times are equally real, because in general relativity, time moves at different speeds for different people based on the strength of gravity and how fast you're accelerating and stuff like that. It seems like not everyone has the same sort of what it counts as now. And because not everyone has the same now, it seems likely that there isn't just one now. It's just the eternal present everywhere in the universe. So anyway, that's a thing to consider.
I think about
You're silly boy, Sam. You're silly boy.
Wait, I mean, silly. You're a B theorist of time, bro. Why are you fucking?
No, I'm a D theorist.
Okay,
I'm not a
long D theorist.
No, wait,
what?
Quantum entanglement.
Is D theory an actual thing?
Yes.
What is it?
Wait, I always thought you were memeing about D theory. D theory is real.
Yeah, D theory is real.
It's a long and thick theory.
It's a time.
Well, I only usually hear people talking about A versus B theory, and one where the present is the only real thing versus the past and future being real. And
So those are all a little bit different. So presentism is the view that like only the present is real. That's one version of A theory. Have you heard of like the growing block before?
Yeah.
That would be like an A theory. Moving spotlight would be an A theory.
Just that the present has like a sort of a special status or something like that.
Status, yeah. Or that there's like genuine A properties of change.
All right, I understand. Okay. Presentism versus eternalism. That's a debate in philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And general relativity tends to push you towards eternalism because of the fact that time isn't the same for everyone. Why is that false? Silly? Why am I silly for saying that?
I just don't know that it connects to the thing you read where it said like all the power is present now. Like I think that could still be true. It could be that like all power obtains at all moments, and then it's like, yeah, it's true to say at any moment that's like all power is present, whatever the fuck that means. Like say there's like a total energy like that's constant, right? Like let's just imagine there's just like a total energy that's constant across all moments in time. You can say like, you know, all the energy is present at each moment, you know.
I don't know, man. I think if there is just a real present, if the present has some special status, then yes, the power that ever was, never will be, is here now. But if the Big Bang is happening, if 1 billion years ago, if the dinosaurs are still alive today and just as real as mine today, I just don't have access to it. I definitely don't want to say all the power is here now. That it makes this moment not special, and so I don't want to say that the power is only here now. I don't know.
Yeah, but it just depends on what power is supposed to be, because like think about like we were talking about meteorology, right? Like say there's just a bunch of symbols and they kind of like, you know, they find themselves in different arrangements at different times, right? But like nonetheless, like at any given time you would say like, yeah, all the symbols are still there. You know, they're not like popping in and out of existence or whatever. They're just like,
yeah.
Does that make sense? And then they have the causal powers, and so like all the causal powers are still there, you know, blah blah blah.
Okay, the next part of this is I am the center of expression for the primal will to good, which eternally creates and sustains the universe. All right, let's say it. I am the center of expression for the primal will to good, which eternally creates and sustains the universe.
Center of expression
That sounds kind of self-centered. Yeah, that sounds kind of.
Yeah.
I am the center of the universe. Okay. I wish that was. I guess
Yeah,
that's
he goes out all around me. Are they just like NPCs?
Centric model.
Yeah, can you define the center of expression from the back of expression or the left of expression?
The center cannot hold.
That gives me a headache.
Wait, is this? Did you write this out? Where you get this?
No. This is some Kabbalah stuff that now asked me to read, and so now we're analyzing what it says.
What was the second thing?
I am the center of expression for the primal will to good, which eternally creates and sustains the universe. I think this is like solipsistic. I think that like
I don't know.
it's denying that. I think it's denying that other people are equally real as me. And
Did it say I am at the beginning?
Yeah, it's I am.
You just send the whole.
No, that's God then.
Oh wait, no, it says I am a center. Fuck, I didn't say the center. Okay, I fucked up. Okay, I am a center of expression for the primal will to good.
That's a little bit less controversial, I guess.
Yeah, which eternally creates and sustains the universe. Okay, well, why do we think there's a will to good, given that the like, I mean, like, I don't know, you're assuming that the shit's gonna just get better and better. It might, I hope it does, but like, we could make AIs that torture us.
Inductive arguments. Can you send me the text?
You want the full?
Yeah.
It's called the pattern on the trestle board. That's what it's called. Alright, I'll send it to you.
So is it some like ancient Grimoire or what is it?
It's some ancient, it's some Jew shit. I think some Kabbalistic Jew shit. I think. I'm not
It's
sure.
from Dr. Paul Foster Case, who was a Kabbalist famous in Hollywood in the 20s.
So some 1920s Jew rather than
Ancient
wisdom. The
Yeah,
You need to stop him before he finishes his spell.
I was in an antique shop in Hermosa Beach, and I found this book called The Secret Keys of the Tarot, or something to that extent. It's by Dr. Paul Foster Case. It's fascinating, you know. It's very poetic, and I find it to be very relaxation.
Is that the guy who supposedly was like, I don't know, he had some like dreams or something like that, and then wrote a bunch of is that the same guy?
No, Dr. Paul Foster. You can just Google him. It's Dr. Paul Foster Case. He was a member of the Temple of the Golden Dawn in Hollywood.
Thinking of Edgar Casey.
Oh, okay.
But it's all Kabbalah.
All right, I'm gonna keep reading. Through me, its unfailing wisdom takes its thought. Okay, through me, its unfailing wisdom takes form and thought and word. I mean, I don't know. I don't think the wisdom of the universe is like unfailingly expressing itself through my words. I say dumb shit all the time. I don't know, bro.
But see, wisdom is capitalized, meaning that it's almost like its own divine Godhead to a certain extent. And without you, the player, what is God's wisdom? I mean, you know, it requires the man or the woman to essentially be an agent of this divine wisdom, which is Torah.
You said that was written in the 20s? They capitalized like every noun back then.
Can you swallow first before talking now?
Sorry, Jude. They capitalized nouns like in every sentence back then.
Probably in the 20s.
An age of science, but I would argue it was not the golden age of philosophy.
Well, they capitalize everything because Alish is God. All is God. So that's why they capitalize a lot of these words, because they're trying to show the reader, hey, all is God. This is a divine element of God.
No, they're capitalizing artifact, right? That a lot of American English speakers have from their education back then, right? It's a thing that happens in some European languages. Since English is technically a Germanic language, that sort of thing was still like taught up until the relatively modern.
I know, but you need to see the picture. You need to see the picture of this divine trestle board thing, because other words that are capitalized: will to good, will, victorious life, understanding, limitless light, eternal being, kingdom spirit. You just have to see the words they capitalize to know what they're trying to infer.
All right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna read the whole thing, and then I'm gonna take ChatGPT and ask it to replace some of the abstract words with different abstract words, and we'll see if they like how much it changes the meaning. Because I think that you can just like, this feels like deep tropic energy to me, where you can just like take a bunch of abstractions and like put them together in word salad and see that they sound profound. So okay, anyway. Filled with understanding of its perfect law, I am guided moment to moment along the path of liberation. From the exhaustless riches of limited substance, I draw all things needful, both spiritual and material. I recognize the manifestation of the undeviating justice in all circumstances of my life, in all things great and small. I see the beauty of divine expression. Living from that will, supported by its unfailing wisdom and understanding, mine is the victorious life. I look forward with confidence to the perfect realization of the eternal splendor of the limitless light. In thought and word and deed, I rest my life from day to day upon the foundation of eternal being. The kingdom of spirit is embodied in my flesh. All right, what do we think, guys?
I mean, it's just like pretty standard, you know, like, I don't know, Neoplatonism, mysticism stuff, or like, God is the source of all this cool stuff, and he also sort of like
But this is
direct involvement. Hold on, has like a pretty direct involvement in the lives of people who, I don't know, are aware of him or something, that they can see his actions like just very directly in their life and their consciousness.
This is a flashcard, though. It's 10, not 11, 10, not 9. I mean, it's called the Pattern on the Trestle Board. You know, if you have the link, put it in the chat so people can look at it. But it's short and sweet, and it's an analysis of the self. And it's really like essentially like a mirror card, meaning, you know, what do I need to change to get back into equilibrium? Is it my understanding? Is it, you know, how do I get back? How do I get the kingdom of spirit? I mean, you know, if you want to be agnostic and atheistic about it, you know, it's all just fluff, but it's positivity. And I think a lot of people on this app need to hear positive vibrations as opposed to the constant, chronic, low vibration negativity that people put into this box and that we all suffer from. You know, I prefer the positive. That's all I'm saying.
All right, guys, I asked ChatGPT to just reverse the meaning of all the sentences and see if it sounds profound. All the weakness that never was and never will be is absent now. I am a hollow vessel for the flat fundamental drive to ruin, which endlessly fractures and unravels the cosmos. Through me, its faltering folly dissolves into silence and dust. Devoid of clarity, it is shattered law. I stumble moment to moment along the road of bondage. From the barren void of its empty husk, I am denied all that sustains, both spectral and physical. I submit to the chaos of the wandering injustice, the twist through every event in my existence. In all things great and trivial, I witness the distortion of the profane erosion. Drifting from that will, abandoned by its vanishing insight and broken perception, mine is the defeated path. I move forward in uncertainty toward the dissolution of the fading gloom and boundless abyss. In silence and void and decay, I scatter my being, moment to moment, upon the crumbling ground of fleeting illusion. The hollow of absence is buried in my flesh. Yo, that shit's fucking hard. That goes hard, bro.
Those records from those metal records from like the 70s or 80s or whatever, where you
That's wild.
play them upside down backwards, and they play like some like you're supposed to play like some demon music or something.
That's really interesting.
That really challenges the picture drawn by the first reading, because it's just like, now it feels like the metaphysics are the same. It's just, it's from the perspective of somebody who's been abandoned by this being. Maybe, I don't know, you could read it in some like dualistic way where there's like, you know, the God and the demiurge, and this guy is in the grip of the demiurge rather than the divine.
Oh, no, I like that, Sam. I thought that was very cool.
I like to do that, where I try to find out when someone says some shit to me, if I can say its exact opposite, and if it also sounds profound, then probably there wasn't something profound there to begin with. Like, I don't know, like, if someone says, like, you have to think about now, and that sounds profound, you go, you have to think about the future, and that sounds profound. It's like, okay, maybe then neither of them is, like, particularly wise advice.
But I think the now is all important. And if you're in the now, you're essentially being pragmatic and practicing common sense. You're dealing with the problem now. And if you want to change the future, the only way you can change the future is in the now. So it is like that Groundhog Day movie. And he was stuck in a time loop, but he finally broke the time loop when he actually got happy, meaning that, like, that's how it became the next day. Is, I don't know if you remember that movie and the premise, but he eventually falls in love with that woman.
Where I got like my philosophy from fucking Groundhog Day and Home Alone.
You don't like Bill Murray, Dr. Sasha?
It's not about what I
Have you seen the movie? What About Bob? It's a movie. I'm just talking about some media here. That's all I'm mentioning, Dr.
I
Sasha.
understand that's what you're talking about. I'm just saying, like, you know.
I'm not telling you I'm a philosophy of clown college like you, Dr. Sasha, but I mean, if you want to demonstrate your superiority in philosophy, go ahead and tell us something true, Dr. Sasha. I hear you on this app a lot saying one word a minute with Dr. Andrew in the Christian, debate room. I mean, go ahead and tell us something interesting or bring something to the table, Dr. Sasha. Stop complaining.
I appreciate the title, but I'm just saying, like, it's not a very good reason to think that it's like some profound moral truth that somebody decided to like build a movie around it as a premise. Like, that's just probably like not a good way to think.
What, you don't think a man and a woman united is not a moral, profound truth?
That wasn't the truth you talked about.
I know that's because you've never seen the movie Dr. Groundhog Day.
Well, no, you told me what the lesson you took away from the movie was.
Listen, the point is, a man and a woman united supposedly is where the presence of the Blessed Holy Ancient One is. I think that's a verse from the Zohar. So what I'm saying is in Groundhog Day, he unites with the woman at the end of the movie, and then the time loop is broken. So in terms of profound moral truths, supposedly the love of a good woman is the only true thing in existence. Everything else is basically politic.
That's the truth. I understand the Zohar represents something called the Shekinah, which is the female nature of God. Or the female
called Paruta.
No, just sounds like some postmodern bullshit, honestly, now.
I thought it was more legalistic.
It's like probably the same level of like precision and thinking that's exhibited by like gender studies.
It's easy to say that the Shekhinah, or the feminine aspect of the deity, is essentially postmodernity. But if you look at the game of chess, which is a trestle board, and you guys just heard the truth about the self, when the pawn gets to the other side, it transcends into a queen. So if you're a man, I think that's not true.
No, you can turn the pawn into any piece you like.
Well, obviously you choose the queen.
No, sometimes you don't.
Sometimes you, well, the first time, no?
What do you mean the first time?
Well, come on, Dr. Sasha, don't waste our time.
I'm just saying sometimes it's incorrect to turn the pawn into a queen. Sometimes you should turn it into other stuff.
When you turn your pawn into a knight, and you get a checkmate by turning your pawn into a knight. It's like the damn hype shit and everything.
Yeah, but then there's also just like avoiding like stalemates. Like sometimes you wanna go for a rook or a bishop, so that the opponent has an open move.
Listen, Dr. Sasha, don't waste our time with this pawn transformation bullshit. The point about all of this is essentially therapeutic. It's words of positivity, and Sam demonstrated the opposite of positivity, and you can see how that was scorched earth.
What are you talking about?
I know you're not following the conversation, Dr. Sasha, but I know this is not ESL room for non-native English speakers. Perhaps you need to listen more than you speak.
What were you saying, Jeff?
Oh, I didn't know that you could turn a pawn into anything but a queen.
No, anything but a king or a pawn.
No, I thought a queen was what it always did automatically. That's how my grandpa taught me, right? So obviously you didn't know.
Your grandpa was fucking wrong.
Yeah, there's actually
I
there's
said
a
I
bunch
didn't
of
know you were
fun games where if you promote him to a knight, you can get like a checkmate that a queen wouldn't accomplish.
Yeah, I understand the moves you do, right? I didn't know that the rule said you could turn the pawn into something other than a queen.
Your grandpa was a liar. Your grandpa told you false things. We will tell you.
I think he believed it, right? So it wasn't a lie.
I'm not okay.
So,
David's right.
Dr. McZed, I'm wondering if you could tell us in Judaism, how does Judaism deal with opposites in the way that the Tao Te Ching does?
And who is this guy?
Who are you, Dr. Sasha? Please, I'm asking question here. Please don't interrupt.
Yeah, what do you mean when you say profound moral truth now? What are you talking about right there?
Where did this guy come from? Where did you pull him from? He's just like the weirdest.
Please, can we get back to God talk? Sasha, don't attack me personally. Leave the ad hominem out of your mouth, please.
I went outside and got a cigarette, and then I found him under my shoe.
That makes sense, but like he's like it's like a very strange character where he has like what the MAGA Pepe U.S. flag in his profile picture.
I am a comedian. Sometimes people call me a troll, Dr. Sasha.
Then he also does some like weird esoteric bullshit. Like I don't know.
You don't know.
The ancient wisdom of the 1920s should be listened to, Sasha.
Alright.
Sasha, this is a game, and don't take it too seriously. Please be calm and relax now.
I don't. Do you think that this is like how my accent sounds?
Sasha,
it's like if I started doing like a British accent to parody you, that's just ridiculous.
The point now, Sasha, is that we want to talk about God.
Stick to your guns. Stick to your guns.
Sasha, when you read the Tao Te Ching and when you read the Kabbalah, you come to the conclusion that Trump is the correct president of the United States. Don't you know that?
Yeah, that sounds right.
What I have concluded, Dr. Sasha, is that there is not a speck of dust out of place in entire universe.
So when the speck of dust is inside of the bacteria eating the flesh of the baby's eye, that is not out of place.
Till it ends up in your eye. Right, exactly.
Sometimes you are insect, and sometimes you are windshield.
This idea that the universe is good as is and shouldn't be improved feels good psychologically, but it's like a disaster if we all hold it because like we in fact need to make the world better. Like right now the world is full of lots of pain and we need to fix that. And the belief that the world is good as is kind of says like, why would I clean my room if it's perfect as is?
Well, that's why I think that pattern on the trestle board document is essentially a therapeutic tool because it brings you into the now. And it does it in an esoteric way. But to say that it doesn't serve as the same function. Please, you're interrupting my sentence, Dr. Sasha. I will go on mute. You complete.
Perfect. I mean, he didn't understand your point, so like, doesn't understand that if nothing is out of place, there isn't really much point in like moving anything. You know, like, why would you change anything? He just goes to like some other bullshit.
Because there is a song in America. It is called Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. I will now sing it for you. Always look on the bright side of life.
There we go.
I wanted to ask if Dr. Finch guys had a real. What did you say?
I'm asking him if he fixed it.
Yeah, I fixed it. Mized, I have a question for you. This is something I'm very curious about. Are you able to be on mic, Mized?
Yeah, what's up?
Okay, so I asked ChatGPT for the top 20 British intellectuals, and it's like people like Hume, Locke, Hobbes, Bentham, Mill, Adam Smith, Bertrand Russell, Francis Bacon, Edmund Burke, okay, A.J. Ayer, Gilbert Ryle, and then I compared it to like the top 20 Jewish intellectuals. It's like Marx, Freud, Boas, Strauss, Walter Benjamin, Noam Chomsky. But also has like Maimonides, Spinoza, Derrida.
We asked for like scientists. It feels like it's like skipping a lot of people.
Well, what I was saying, said is I have this theory, and tell me what you think, how crazy it is, that the Jewish intellectuals here are much worse than these British intellectuals here. And part of the reason for that is that like centuries of doing Talmudic hermeneutics has given Jews the skill to like rationalize stupid bullshit. And so then they're able to rationalize like fucking Marxism and Freudianism and postmodernism when they're like not actually reasonable views. Whereas like because the British doesn't have this thousands-year-old tradition of rationalizing bullshit, they're like, oh yeah, evolution is true, and like yeah, trade is good.
and they like have less of a, I don't know, skill at rationalizing. What do you think about that?
No, I don't think it's like a rationalization thing, but I do think there's some strength to what you're saying of developing one's scholarship within like a protected university versus like decentralized throughout multiple communities.
Do you
I
agree
think
with
that's
me?
going to make for different types of ideas. Right, like if you look at Marx and Freud, right, they're not approaching it the way Newton did. Freud a little bit. Marx is definitely an outsider.
But do you agree that the
Spinoza's an
British ones?
outsider.
Do you agree the British ones are better than the
Outsider.
Jewish ones?
What'd
The
you
ones
say?
that I mentioned, do you agree that the Jewish ones I mentioned are worse than the British ones I mentioned?
Yes, I agree with you.
And why do you think that would be?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that the British ones that you mentioned were within an accepted scholarship. Like, I think the biggest question would maybe be Adam Smith, because that was like a bit of a new style of university at the time. But like they existed within like institutions of learning, as opposed to the Jewish development of Talmudic study happened in various yeshivas that were not really regulated and weren't pushing to publish or critique each other too much. Like, I'd say that the scholastic environment that was developed in England developed better intellectuals. But I wouldn't say that it's like the Talmudic reasoning that like they can circular out anything. You know, I'd say it's more you can circular out anything if you don't learn the discipline of science.
Sam, you're kind of right, because Chomsky's dad was like a Hebrew scholar.
I do not like Chomsky.
I have this theory, Mixed, that Jews have a skill at rationalizing pseudoscience, that the British people lack this skill. So when they do science, they just don't have this, they like can't just rationalize crazy horseshit at the same level.
No, that's not true. I mean, like, it might be true of modern Britain, but like back in the day, they were, you know, snake charmers. They were also mystical. If you, it's actually a funny trope in comic books. Like the claim to fame of America is mutants because we invented nuclear power and we have diversity issues. But in England, they have magic powers. All the magic people, they come from England because of all the magic there. Dragons, wizards, Merlin. It's a thing.
Fairies everywhere.
Yeah, the little people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like
that's what Lord of the Rings was. He was trying to give more life to ancient English mythology.
Well, I actually did an entire course on when I was at university, right, on Tolkien, and he was like lamenting that there wasn't like a unified mythology for Britain, and he wanted to like make something along those lines, right? Even though it's not like he was trying to get people to think it was like actually based on real legends or anything, but yeah, like that was a thing that he lamented about. He wanted there to be like some unified mythology, like you know, like at least seems to be true of other places when you grew up in England at the time he did, right? And it seemed like there was a Chinese unified mythology and Japanese and you know, these places all over the world. In reality, they were like, if you're familiar with the cultures, they're much more like fragmented, but the late 1800s, early 1900s, England, it seemed like Egypt had some sort of unified grand national myth, all this sort of stuff, right? Going back forever.
Could you say that like the monarchy was central?
And that's not mythology, right? That's like a bit of unification and maybe
divine though.
That's not like a unified mythology.
Yeah, what they wanted was like access to the mythic realm. The Greeks tell their stories of satyrs in the desert. The Arabs will tell us about the jinn. And the English, they have old stories, but they like undid a lot of them when they adopted Christianity.
That's right. The Christians specifically, the missionaries specifically undid them, right? So like Tolkien was at the forefront. He was like a scholar, right? He was among the forefront of pushing that to be taken seriously as like you know, sort of mythological history and like the artistic thing, right? Because that was just poo-pooed upon for that. And if you ever read Veil, it's really hard to say Old English, but hundreds of years after like the story came about, like redid it in a way that would be allowed to be kept, right? But like he really disliked how all of the myths got paved over, right? And the vast majority weren't even remembered anymore.
Right. And I like share his opinions with that. Like,
It's
England is a
astrological
very
math
weird
for
case in that their
self-analysis and
mythological era
equilibrium
was
of
ended.
peace.
Their Christianization was small. They were invaded and colonized a few different times before pushing off one of the invaders and being the invader left standing. Right? And in all of that, they're run by kings. Shortly after that, they realize that they're citizens, and then they're recharacterizing their own history as they overthrow their monarch. So, in that era, like 70, that's the other weird thing. We know more about history, their history. We know more about what led to them than they knew about what led to them. Because they didn't have the best records back then, and people weren't literate, and they invented new myths. The formation of America was part of the myth formation of the citizenship of England, redefining itself while getting rid of their king. It's a very complicated, like, relationship with the state and identity when it comes to the English history.
Alright, one piece of evidence against what I'm saying about the Jews versus the Brits is that the Germans also suck in this regard. And so maybe because the Jews lived in Germany and shit, that they were just influenced by this like general German trend towards of like making up bullshit. Like, I mean, like, I asked the top 20 German philosophers, and like it had like people that I also don't respect. So I don't know. Maybe it's something about British culture that's like uniquely has a good thing where it's like not coming up with bullshit. Maybe
alternatively, here's an alternate theory.
They had lots of country houses in the country, and that maybe being around animals and nature makes you prone to like not just get stuck in the world of ideas. Like you're more embodied and like more in the world if you're like in nature more. Whereas if you're like stuck in a city, cramped writing books, you're gonna like fall victim to abstraction. I don't know. This is out of my ass.
The truth about British people and historical success is the repeater mechanization and automation of governments.
I think that all languages are somewhat siphoned off from each other in terms of understanding. Like the epitome of my understanding is going to be linked to the understanding I have in a language. So like the epitome of my understanding in English will be different from the epitome of my understanding in Hebrew. And so what I would posit as to why you and I might agree that the English intellectuals are superior to the others we've listed, it's because we're speaking English. They are, by definition, the most correct.
What are you saying?
If we were to take the side that a Russian philosopher or a Japanese philosopher or an Indian philosopher were superior, we would be fighting against the very like waves of our language, which push and say, this is the epitome of English understanding.
I don't know. I mean, it's true that because I'm speaking English, I'm more likely to have English culture, and therefore I'm more likely to be like English intellectuals.
Yeah, they say that about Americans. They have a weird deference to the British accent.
But I am not. I'm making the claim that the thinkers that I'm talking about just are better. Like the ones that are doing like the.
I agree with you,
like
but we are
Freud
both
and Marx are
biased.
making mistakes in a way that like Bertrand Russell's making less of a mistake. He's better at reasoning, and I'm like sort of. I'm objective about the fact that some people are just better at reasoning than other people.
And I'm saying that some of that objective standardization comes from the language we're using.
What's up, Timothy?
Englishman is here.
Yeah, but we don't think that the ones who came out studies are very smart. So,
Menai.
Excuse me, sir.
No, go take a hot bath.
What did you say? What did you?
Timothy, to get you up to speed, I was claiming that the British intellectuals are better than the Jewish intellectuals, and I claim that this is because the Jews have like 1,000 years to like come up with good rationalizations of bullshit in the Talmud, and the British didn't have that, so they had like an advantage intellectually to not practice the skill of rationalizing bullshit. And that was
Do you mean like, are you comparing like rabbis to like Enlightenment philosophers?
I'm comparing Locke and Hume and Hobbes and Benjamin and Smith and Darwin to Marx and Freud and Strauss and Boas and Adorno and Walter Benjamin and Leo Strauss and Chomsky.
Chomsky?
Yeah, I'm anti-Chomsky.
Okay, so you're saying, sweet, so you're saying the enlightened, the British
Take care of
Enlightenment
your
philosopher
health.
is superior to like Jewish contemporary philosophy.
No, okay. If I have a list of I asked ChatGPT. I gave him a list of all my favorite intellectuals, and like half of them are Jewish.
Actually, the majority of them are British.
Relax your foot and take a
But
lozenge.
if you
Drink
look
some
at the most
water.
famous Jewish ones, they tend to be fucking up more than the most famous British ones. Even though there are lots of good.
I watched like a documentary on like a History Channel once, and there was like a famous British like jurist or something who
How's
it
your
turned out
rainbow?
actually had like Jewish ancestry. It turned out was like Jewish, but like
How was your rainbow?
as this like intellectual, they don't really remark about his Jewish heritage, right? But apparently, like, and I can't remember if it was like Magna Carta or some other like really like important legal document or something, like some kind of like constitutional document. But apparently, like there's like these like parallels with like the Torah and stuff, and basically they were able to determine that the first coherent kind of concept of a nation that he based a lot of this like legislation or whatever this is like constitutional work on was basically just like based on the Old Testament, like based on the Torah and the Talmud or whatever else, like basically the Jewish concept of like a nation and a nation state. So the modern nation state, essentially that concept is like derived from like the Jewish conception of a nation. So I don't know, like maybe there's a lot more influence. Maybe like Jewish. There's like far more of a Jewish cultural influence on a lot of these great thinkers that you're speaking about. I mean, definitely at least Christian, like in terms of Christianity or like religiously, Jewish people have a really big influence.
So, okay, of my favorite philosopher thinkers ever, Scott Alexander is Jewish, Douglas Hofstadter is Jewish, Robert Nozick is Jewish.
I didn't know Nozick was Jewish.
He's Jewish. Jason Kalfas is Jewish. Agnes Keller is Jewish. Elliot Stover is Jewish. A.J. Ayer is Jewish. Stephen Pinker is Jewish. Tyler Cowen is Jewish. There are
Bernie Sanders.
Harvey Weinstein is Jewish.
Yeah, George. So I'm not against. I'm not saying that